I was sitting alone in my car after burying my father when my phone played a voicemail he left years ago. One I was never supposed to hear. Story: my dad and I hadn't spoken in almost 3 years when he died. Not because of one big fight, but because of a slow, painful drift that neither of us knew how to stop. The kind where pride stacks up quietly and silence becomes routine. And when I got the call from the hospital saying he'd had a heart attack at 62, I remember saying thank you instead of I'm sorry, because my brain just short-circuited like that. Then came the funeral in a small Ohio town where everyone told me he was a good man, and I nodded like I agreed, even though all I could think about was how I didn't really know him anymore. After the burial, I sat in my car, gripping the steering wheel, trying not to cry, because I still felt angry and I hated myself for it. And that's when my phone buzzed with a notification that said voicemail from Dad, dated 3 years ago. Which made no sense because I had listened to all his messages back then just to delete them without replying. But this one was marked unheard, and I almost ignored it because I was scared it would reopen something I'd worked hard to bury. But grief has a way of pushing you forward even when you resist. So I hit play, and his voice came through crackly and unsure, the way it always sounded when he didn't know what to say. And he started by saying my name slowly, like he was practicing. Then he laughed softly and said he didn't know if I'd ever hear this, but he needed to say it anyway. And he talked about how proud he was of me, even though I never believed him when he said it to my face. And how he messed up a lot as a dad because he was raised by a man who thought silence was strength. And how every day he told himself he would call me and apologize properly, but he was scared I wouldn't answer. Then his voice broke and he admitted that the last argument we had kept replaying in his head, and he wished he'd just hugged me instead of trying to win. And at that point I was crying so hard I had to pull over because I couldn't see the road. And he went on to say that if I ever had kids of my own, he hoped I would be braver than he was and say, I love you, even when it felt awkward or late. And then he ended it by saying he loved me and he always would, no matter how much time passed or how quiet things got. And the voicemail ended with the sound of him exhaling, like he'd been holding his breath the whole time. And I realized this message had been sitting on an old phone plan voicemail server, because he recorded it when he thought his number was about to be disconnected. Meaning he made it at a moment when he thought he was disappearing from my life completely. And something in me cracked open because I finally understood that the distance between us wasn't a lack of love, but a shared fear of rejection. And I sat there for a long time, replaying it over and over, like if I listened enough, I could answer him back through time. And in the weeks after his death, I started doing things differently. I reached out to people I had let drift away. I apologized without justifying myself. I said I love you out loud even when my voice shook. And sometimes late at night, I still play that voicemail not because it hurts, but because it reminds me that people are complicated. And love doesn't always sound the way we expect. And I can't change the fact that my dad died thinking we were still broken. But I can live in a way that honors the man who tried to say what mattered even when he was afraid. And every now and then, when my phone buzzes unexpectedly, I still hope for a second that it's him calling back. Just to hear my name one more time.